Hello, I'm Hutch and welcome to the sketchbook tour. So I started this sketchbook in March and I finished it at the start of April. I'm just going to pause the video here to tell you that I made this sketchbook myself out of khaki paper, and I'll talk about that more at the end. So this first page I did for a YouTube video earlier this month, and it's of a largemouth bass. One of the things I really wanted to achieve in this sketchbook was to experiment more, and on the right here you can see I had a really good play around with drawing different underwater scenes, and I went on, you'll see later in the sketchbook, to take these kind of experiments to create more pieces and develop on these ideas further. Now this page came out really, the one on the left came out really light. I didn't mean for it to come out this light, but I had a really good play around with some florals there and some different kind of leaves, and the mice are just too cute. Then on the right here, this was one of my first kind of large pieces with botanical inks, and I really loved using them. They're really beautiful and I think they really match this kind of subject matter really well. They work beautifully with the birds. On this next page I was also working with the botanical inks. My botanical inks were from an Etsy seller called Bohemian Raspberry Art. I'll leave a link to her Instagram and her Etsy shop down below. They're really good quality and really beautiful. So on the right hand side here I've taken the experiments from the first page and developed upon them further to create this whole composition. It's really beautiful and it's one of my favourites in the sketchbook. I love how you have the focal point of the fish and then you have the scenery created by the lily pads and the different textures. The purple ink is from the same Etsy seller as on the left hand side. Again, another botanical ink and really beautiful. I love this so much. You'll see later I try to make it into a lino design. The fox on the left hand side is from a Draw This in Style with me, and I really like it. It's very cute and it is very much in my own style. I'll leave a link to the artist down below because I can't remember off the top of my head. And on the right hand side I started and then abandoned trying to work on some kind of foliage and leaves. It's something I developed further on in the sketchbook and it's something I kind of wanted to develop further on, but I just abandoned this page, but that's okay. That's the whole point of a sketchbook. Like this left hand side with the white ink, I like the fish, but the rest of the experiments didn't really go to plan. But I'm quite happy I played around with the white ink on the black ink. For the right hand side you can see it's very similar to those experiments I was doing earlier, but I've reduced the amount of detail and I've simplified it so that then it's easier to transfer to lino, and this technique has worked really well and I got some really good lino prints out of it. So I'm really happy with how this turned out and it's something I'm definitely going to do for future lino. On to the next page. So I've just got some tracing paper because the one on the right has some coloured pencil and I didn't want it to press through onto this painting I did. This is on botanical inks and I love it. I love drawing hares. They've got so much character and movement to them. And I love the kind of flowers I did. And I tried to do a larger study. This has a whole load of different materials. It's very mixed media. It was originally done in botanical inks, but then I layered coloured pencils, Posca pens, and maybe even some watercolour on top. And it kind of was hideous, but the Posca pens really saved it with the texture of the fur, and I really like the outcome actually, so I'm happy I stuck with it, and it's really cute and I just love drawing hares. This next page I actually used watercolour, hence the tracing paper because it might transfer. This was another Draw This in Style. I'll leave a link to the artist down below as well. Before this painting I hadn't worked in colour a lot and this really reignited my kind of love of bright colours. The yellow branch the bird is sitting on is supposed to be my yellow fine line paintbrush that you will see in many of my videos. I often paint in parallel, so I painted this one on the right at the same time as the one on the left, and I really loved the colours and the branches and it really reintroduced me to colour again. Next page I go back to black, but we'll talk about that. So here is more semi-successful kind of foliage branch tree kind of experiments. I did take some of these on, but some of these were a real failure, like this one in the middle and that one which kind of looks like a weed plant. I also tried painting the border black, decided I didn't like that, so repainted it white. Again, that really didn't work, but that's the point of a sketchbook. We're experimenting here. And here is another hare. I think hares are quite an intimidating animal to draw, but they're really beautiful and they have so much movement once you get practice drawing them. So moving past that brief interlude into black to more colour, this is the start of the vermilion phase. This is when I was still kind of experimenting with the ink and having a play around to see whether I enjoyed painting with it before I committed to doing the full month of April only using this ink and the white ink. I really love these deers. Again, deers are really, they always just turn out well. I mean, well, these ones, some of them, their eyes are a little bit funny, like the top left and the top right, but don't mind that, but just the kind of whole body of them. So from now on you'll see a lot more vermilion and colours. So here I was testing out the pencils. I wanted to get back into using pencils and using coloured pencils for sketching, so I drew these kind of stoats. I was having a play around to see whether the pencils would erase, so they'd be practical for sketching, and whether I could draw over the ink, how the colours went with the ink. And I was really happy I did these little tests. It gave me a bit more confidence that I could use these materials for a month and only those materials. So here are the first couple of paintings in the Vermilion Challenge. These were birds. I think these are very stiff, but I was still getting comfortable. And then I did some badgers. These came out really washed out. They're really cute, but I wish I added a bit more colour to them. With this red ink you do have to build it up a lot, and I don't think I'd quite twigged that yet, so they are washed out. You'll see as well my kind of florals are adapting more. It's more kind of meadowy. And now it's the start of my landscape phase. These first couple of drawings were really scary to kind of do. They're very different from anything I'd done before. There was a lot of skills I was very out of practice with, like perspective. And looking at these now as well, at the time I thought I was adding loads and loads of details, but I can see now there's quite a few patches where I could have added a lot more detail and layered up a heck of a lot more. I think it's partly still getting used to the material I was using, but also just landscapes in general. This one, however, I added way too much detail to, and it's a bit too much. And then I drew these koi, which are really pretty. I really love the kind of subtle watermarks I've done with the light ink. And then this painting was a real game changer. It was the first one I started to use this purple pencil to add in the road details. And it contrasts really, really well with the vermilion drawing ink and adds like an extra depth to it. There are still some areas where I feel like I could have added extra detail, but this painting was the reason why I started using sketchbooks again, to experiment more. And finally, these wrens. These are so beautiful. This is when I started to kind of really nail using the vermilion drawing ink, because I was drawing a subject I was very familiar with, so I was able to get the kind of level of ink correct. And that's the finished sketchbook. You can probably tell by the dates I filled this up really quickly, so I've made myself a second sketchbook. I make these sketchbooks myself out of khaki paper and grey board and just embroidery thread. I'll leave a link to the sea lemons tutorial I used to create this sketchbook. This new one is over double the size of the first one I've made. I've also added 2 more sets of stitches. This makes it more stable and less wobbly, and I'm really happy with this format. I've even made a slightly smaller sketchbook for smaller drawings when I don't quite have time to do a full painting, and I'm just really happy with these. I definitely recommend having a go at sketchbook binding yourself. I think I'm going to do an updated tutorial on how I make these. I still haven't quite perfected it though. So I hope you join me as I fill up these new sketchbooks, and thanks for watching.